I made a video 10 years ago about making this bed, and it's actually held up pretty great. It's got a ton of storage. In fact, it's got 3 really big drawers on each side. But like with just about anything, it's also got a couple of problems. In fact, the storage is also one of the problems. I've got 2 really big, nice drawers, and a third one that won't open because of this. When I made this bed, I didn't have a bedside table, which meant that third drawer could go all the way back to the back, but now that I have one, I just can't open it, and that's something we're gonna fix. And to show you the other problem, I actually kind of have to take the bed apart. You probably didn't see the video, so I'll just fill you in. The drawers on the sides are basically 2 cabinets, which are connected by these stringers. But that means that there's a huge amount of space in the middle that's completely wasted, and I wanna change that. Now the first thing we gotta do is actually solve that last drawer. So we're gonna rebuild the base, and I'm not gonna make you watch me do that because it's basically the old video, but I'm gonna make it so that that last drawer starts a little bit further out. But after that, we're gonna build a giant headboard. So basically, I was able to just recreate what I had before, but with different spacing for the drawers. I couldn't reuse the original pieces I had because they were all glued together and I just couldn't move those dividers, but don't worry, I'll use that wood for another project. But once I got those new bases in place, it was time to replace my 10-year-old mattress with a new one, which brings me to today's sponsor. This video is sponsored by Brooklyn Bedding, which is a mattress company, and they've been in the mattress industry for over 25 years. They're kind of known for top-of-the-line mattresses without the crazy luxury cost, and I've only laid on this thing for a few minutes, but so far, it's awesome. When you go to look for a new mattress, you have to think about a lot of different things. So Brooklyn Bedding offers different firmnesses, different heights, they have lots of different dimensions, and even non-traditional bed sizes. You're definitely gonna find something that fits you. And then once you find the mattress that you want, they ship it to you in a box, and you just open it up, it inflates, and then you get to sleep on it for 120 nights. And if you decide you don't like it, you can return it. But if you do decide to keep it, and you probably will, it's gonna have a lifetime limited warranty. Now, one of the coolest things about Brooklyn Bedding, I think, is that all of their mattresses are designed, manufactured, and shipped from their facility in Arizona. And if you live in the United States, you get free shipping. Now, we were looking for a new mattress because our old one was just starting to kind of wear out, and I've got kind of a bad back. Plus, I get really hot when I sleep. So we picked the Sedona Elite. Now, this thing is made up of several different layers. It's got a spring layer in the bottom, a couple of different layers of foam, and then a cooling layer on the top of it. So my hope is that it's gonna keep me nice and cool while I sleep, and my back's gonna feel a lot better. So what you do is go to brooklynbedding.com/ILikeToMakeStuff, or just use the QR code that's on the screen, and when you get there, pick out the mattress that works for you, then use the code ILikeToMakeStuff at checkout, and that's gonna give you 30% off your order. I hope you find something over there that works for you if you're looking for a mattress. Big thanks to Brooklyn Bedding for sponsoring this video. Now, let's talk about the headboard. So I was wanting to do a headboard, not just a board, but like a unit that goes against the wall, and it's gonna push the bed out just a few inches to make up that difference for the last drawer. But my wife and I had different ideas of what that headboard should look like. Originally, I was thinking we would have some open shelves with some decorations, maybe a few books, but my wife doesn't want to be able to see anything. She actually just wants the headboard with no other little stuff that's gonna end up looking messy. But we did agree that we both wanted something that we could sit up against and lean back just a little bit so that we could sit in bed and read. We came up with a solution. And the solution is this. It's a really simple headboard, honestly, but it's kind of inspired by some mid-century modern headboards that I found. I just like the look of them, but the thing that was unique about them was that they had a slanted back. They leaned back just a little bit, and then they had sliding panels on the front. So I thought that was a pretty good compromise for what we were looking for. Like I said, it's only a few inches deep, so there's not gonna be a whole lot of storage on the inside of it, but it's good for a few books and things. There's gonna be 3 panels on the front that slide around, so you'll only be able to have kind of one section open at any given time. That's just the nature of having overlapping sliding panels. But the thing that's really unique and maybe a little bit difficult about this is that all 3 of those panels need to slide but they're gonna be leaned back a little bit. So I've gotta figure out how to make the tracks for them to fit into and how to make them slide smoothly. I wanted this headboard to be made out of walnut, and I don't really have a good source for getting solid walnut around here, or walnut plywood for that matter, so I had to order some. And the only way I could order it was to get half sheets, but not like 4x4 half sheets, 2x8 half sheets. Check this out. I had to order a 2x8 sheet of plywood, and it came in a cardboard box, which is a little bit weird to me, but that's just the way they shipped it. Now this is actually gonna work out fine for me because this entire thing is just gonna be made out of 8-inch strips. The sides, the top, the bottom, except for the doors, it's just strips. So let me get these things cut down and I'll show you what the plan is. So I've got a whole bunch of strips of plywood. Now this project is something really anybody could do. This is all gonna be pretty basic plywood construction using pocket holes to put it together. The only thing that's complicated are the angles, and that's what we're gonna start with first. These are the uprights that go on each side of the headboard, and so we're gonna start by cutting an angle on them. Now the angle on this piece is kind of long. It's slight, it's only 7 degrees, but it goes from down here all the way up to about here. And so you could do this a few different ways. It's probably not a great choice to use a miter saw for it. You could use a taper jig on a table saw, and that might work. Or you could freehand it. I'm gonna use a bandsaw, but you could also use a circular saw just to freehand the line. And in my case, I'm gonna end up covering that cut surface with some edge banding later on, so I've got a little bit of leeway. Cutting those was pretty easy, but now we need to talk about the doors, because even though we're not gonna put them in yet, we have to start making allowance for the sliding doors before we put the thing together. Here's the deal. One way to do sliding doors is to make a little slot for the door to sit in. So the door's gonna be sitting down here like this, and it can move back and forth. But to be able to get it in there and held at the top, you have to do something a little bit different up here. You have to make enough room for you to be able to slide the door in, up, and then drop it down into the slot, but still be held by this top edge. So basically, just make sure you have a bigger slot at the top than you do at the bottom. Now in my case, these doors are actually gonna be leaning back at an angle, which means the slots need to be at an angle, and the bottom slot and the top slot are not gonna be directly on top of each other. The top one's gonna be moved back a little bit. Now luckily, I modeled this in Fusion, so I've got all the measurements and all the angles that I need so that I can cut these pieces correctly. And the reason I'm pointing this out is because I have to cut this slot into the top panel before I put the whole thing together. Now, before cutting slots in a 77-inch long piece of plywood, I wanted to test it at a small scale to make sure that I had all my measurements right and it was just gonna work in the first place, and I think it's gonna work just fine. This is my test piece. The doors will kind of slide up in here like that and then drop down just a little bit, and they fit and they slide just fine. I wanted to point out that if you have a dado stack, you could make these a lot easier, but that's like a 3/4 inch dado, and it's a little bit scary, so I'm just gonna stick with the single blade and then clean these up with the chisel when I'm done. So now I have to cut those same 2 slots in this very, very long piece of wood, but I also have to put a 7-degree bevel on the front edge so that it matches up with the slant. I gotta do that first. Starting to get some structure there. It's looking pretty cool, but now it's time to put the backing on this section where I'm eventually gonna put some shelves. For the backing, I'm gonna use some 1/4 inch plywood, some walnut plywood. Now it's a 77-inch long opening. I wasn't really thinking, and I only bought a 4-foot long piece, which means I'm gonna end up having to make that in 3 individual pieces and mount it in there. It'll be fine, just a little more work. Now, I could just put those panels directly on the back, but that wouldn't really help with rigidity at all. So instead, we can inset them by taking a router around and making a little bit of a slot that those panels can sit in. With some glue and brads, it will help keep this shape in shape. To do this, I'm gonna use a rabbiting bit, and this is gonna go in the router. The little bearing down here is gonna ride around the inside of the surface and cut a little shelf that those panels can sit onto. It's very easy, it's just super messy. Now the centerpiece is pre-finished, that's why it looks different, but it gives me an idea what the whole thing is gonna end up looking like, and it's gonna look good. The seams between those panels are gonna be covered up by these uprights, and these are gonna go in so that the shelves have something to attach to, plus they're gonna kind of tie the whole thing together. I'm gonna have to glue all this up at once, and it's gonna be kind of hard to see, so that's the plan, whether you'll be able to see it or not. The shelves that I'm putting in are fixed. They don't need to move, so I'm gonna use some pocket holes to hold them in place. But before I do that, I need to cover this cut edge with some edge banding. And since I'm doing these, I'm just gonna go ahead and do all the rest of it because edge banding is kind of tedious. I made a third shelf for the middle section, but actually it looks pretty good without it, so I think I'm gonna leave it out. So the next and almost last thing to do on the headboard is to make the track and then the sliding doors. And for some reason, I'm kind of wanting to procrastinate on that. Maybe I'm not sure about it. Either way, I've got other stuff that I can do, so we're gonna go wrap up the frame. And I do mean literally wrap up the base, like we have to wrap the entire thing in walnut plywood with panels that match the doors. I'm gonna take these long pieces of plywood and chop them into the right lengths, keeping them in order so the grain on the plywood will kind of run down the side of the bed and along the end. Speaking of the end, I still have to make a giant drawer. Having a John McClane moment here.
Get together, have a few laughs.
So this is a huge drawer, and the front of that drawer is going to be covered with a piece of plywood, just kind of a normal drawer front. And I'm going to edge band that and put finish on it before I just stick it onto the front of this drawer. And then I have to do the rest of the entire base the exact same way. And I'm not going to make you watch me do all of that, just trust that I'm going to be doing a lot of edge banding and finishing off camera. Speaking of finish, it's time to go wrap up those sliding doors and then add a couple of coats of finish to the entire headboard so this whole thing can be done. I put that cross piece there so that I have a way to connect it to the base. So I'm gonna drive a couple of screws through that piece into the back of the base, and when I do that, this bed is done. I'm very happy with how this thing turned out, but more importantly, my wife likes it, which means we were able to find a compromise on what the headboard looks like, and that makes me happy. And honestly, I think it looks great with or without the doors. They just have a different look, but they both look pretty fantastic. Now, not only do I think it looks nice, it has a ton of storage, I also think it's a fantastic first project for somebody who wants to get into making their own furniture. It is not a difficult build. It's something you get to enjoy every single day, and you can customize it to look like the rest of your house looks. If you are interested in making one of these beds, I'm gonna put a link down in the description that will take you over to my online store where you can buy some plans. They're inexpensive, but they will walk you through every step of making this bed, and you can always use this video as a reference. If you do make it, I would love to see pictures of your final project, so be sure to send them to me. Thanks for hanging out with me on this one. I'll catch you next time. But you're never gonna be able to have all 3 sections opened at the same time, and that's kind of on purpose. Purposed? To do this, I'm gonna put a rabbiting bit in the router. This little bearing is gonna run along. When I do that, this bed is done. I should have said this bed is made, like because you have to make your bed.